Ah, Roshar, land of metamodern beauty. What secrets does it hold? What horrors? Ladies and gentlemen, before Wind and Truth releases, I would like to toss my hat into the ring of endless Stormlight content. The last days of theory and analysis are upon us till one half of our journey in Roshar is complete. But as is so commonly stated in these peculiar stormy lands, it is the journey before the destination we must seek. I unfortunately will not be attending Dragonsteel this year. Tickets were a pain to come by, but I hope to be attending next year's. It will forever be my shame not to attend on a Stormlight year of all things, but I digress. What I want to talk about and analyze today is the Stormlight Archive and how it marks a very interesting trend among certain stories and modern works that I have seen. But before we get into a broader analysis, we will first have to tear apart the proverbial tough shell of the Stormlight Archive itself to get at the wonderful, sweet crab meat within. And let me know in the comments down below which order of Radiance you would be in, and which Spren is your favorite type, and watch to the end of the video and I'll let you know mine. So then, my friend, take a seat. There's a high storm approaching, can't you smell it on the air? While it passes, we have a little time for talking and thinking. I got some wine, a weak orange if that is your style, but also a potent Horn-Eater white. I myself can't stand the stuff, but you look like you are made of stronger material. And though some of the light eyes may look down upon us, I have taken a liking to certain Kremling meat. Reminds me of home a little bit. Sit, traveler, and let us converse about these peculiar lands.
This world is a wasteland where nothing can grow. I used to have strength, but I ran out of hope. I know it's my fault that I'm here all alone. This world is a wasteland. Please let me go.
Our journey begins in the Way of Kings. Functionally and structurally, this book is quite unique among first books of fantasy epics, in that it is remarkably slow and brooding. Not in a bad way, it's just that this is a, 380,000 word book that really lets you soak in the world of Roshar. When I picked up The Way of Kings, I was truly enveloped in the unique biosphere and peoples of this place. To the warlike Alethi princedoms, to the Thaylen merchants, or the unremarkable city of Kharbranth, ruled by its kindly old king, Taravangian, lovely man. Quiet place. Characters rarely explain things they wouldn't need to, which only adds to my enthusiastic frustration in trying to delve the world's secrets and history. You see, many of the characters almost speak a different language due to the nature of context and culture. They talk as if understanding all 10 of the damn heralds is commonplace. What's a white spine? The weeping? Is the Almighty the same as the Stormfather? Am I just an idiot for missing these things? Why doesn't the assassin in white like walking on stone? Are the Parshmen the same as the Parshendi? There's a lot going on here, and the book really lets you soak it all in. Answers are given slowly to you, and just by lieu of context clues. It's really clever. I love how the world functions almost totally around the idea of high storms, these grand, sweeping hurricane-like storm fronts which come from the east to crash across the continent. This means the biospheres of the eastern Alethi kingdoms, as well as the cultures, are quite different from the pleasant and softer lands of the west. In the west you have topsoil, grass, trees, stupid plants, animals. Where in the east everything moves. The buds, land corals, and other vast and spiky plants all react to movement. Everything is crabs. It's all crabs. There aren't cows and donkeys, there are chols. No wolves here, only white spines. You want a puppy, a doggy, a good boy? No, my friend, we have axe hounds. It is dog, but crab, you see. And even farther east, out in the shattered plains, there are truly magnificent and terrifying things. Chasm fiends, crabs, scorpions, big as whales just about, that live down in the cracks beneath the earth. Lovely, lovely biosphere, especially for one who enjoys some of the more unusual forms of life that can be found. And that's just the biosphere. There are also the Spren, creatures called to strong emotion or natural phenomenon. You feel great enough terror, you will attract Fear Spren. Glory attracts Glory Spren, Wind attracts Wind Spren, so on and so forth. They are harmless things, not to be bothered with, and have nothing to do with anything. And these differences impact the culture of the people who live within them. the harsh lands of the Far East have bred the insatiably bloodthirsty people of the Alethi princedoms, who, lucky for us, are disjointed and not unified, instead being a large collection of warring princedoms who, What? What are you talking about? They unified, you say? Ooh. Imagine for a moment the terror of the rest of the world, the kingdom of Jah-Keved, or the Thalens, who are known to be slightly less warlike. To put this in perspective, imagine a vast stretch of geography populated by the insane savage Alethi, not savage in that they are club-wielding barbarians, but instead that their militaries are stronger, more dedicated, more fearless, their culture is just built around it. That their commanders will do anything for glory, victory, and land. They are a people forged in blood, but luckily for most of the world, they fight against one another as disparate princedoms for untold periods of time. Until, eventually, tragically, they have come now under unification. Now the largest country on the planet, they possess the most soulcasters, the most dedicated military, the most shard blades, the most shard plate. I hear you asking, what are all these made-up words? I shall answer. A soulcaster is a device that makes supply lines obsolete. You need food, simply turn rock into grain. With this, Alethi armies run rampant through enemy territories, eating off the land and soulcasting what they need. They are faster, more ferocious, and this has created a culture of offense, attack, 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 never defense. That, combined with the insane prevalence of shards, make them a truly terrifying foe. Shard plate is, in essence, fantasy space marine armor. It makes you stronger, faster, feeds on Stormlight given off by high storms to heal. A warrior in shard plate is not to be taken lightly upon a battlefield. Its other half, the shard blades, are bonded weapons that can manifest at the wielder's will. Once called after the appropriate amount of heartbeats have passed, the blade manifests. Most take the appearance of massive, comically sized blades that drip frost and have weird edges or shape, completely unwieldy things, save for the fact that they weigh practically nothing and eat through solid objects like a nano blade. Except when you cut a dude with it. Dude's body will remain whole, but his connection to it will not. Dead material is cut, and living material is turned dead. It takes a second one to actually chop it. So, you cut off someone's head, he looks fine, but, his eyes burn out of his skull. Yeesh. So picture this for a moment. You are on a battlefield as some mercenary. Let's say there's some nasty border dispute between Jah-Keved and some Alethi Blight-Eye prince. You and me, my lucky friend, are in the back. It's all right. I got us a good spot. There's your bow. Here's mine. Our job is to shoot the other guy. We're behind lots of walls of men with spears and shields and armor. We're good. Picture then the Alethi force. First come the shard bearers with their bodyguards. We are super unlucky, so let's say there are 5 of them. They come sprinting, full tilt boogie from their lines across the open field. Arrows barely do anything. Spears and swords do much the same. When these things impact our line, they're going to plow straight through a formation, eating their way to where we are, and then will come the enthusiastically cheering Alethi soldiers. You want to do that? I don't want to do that. No, thank you. Basically, picture an entire murder squad of guts from Berserk. Both Dragon Slayer and Berserker armor endowed. Yeah, you picture that and you get pretty close to just how bad it is. My point is that with all this, is that the world of the Stormlight Archive is brilliantly realized. And that is just the world, and the characters are just as special.
Must talk in every telephone, get eaten off the web. Must rip out all the epilogues from the books that we have read. Into the face of every criminal, strapped firmly to a chair. We must stare, we must stare, we must stare.
The Lord of the Rings, The First Law, The Wheel of Time, Song of Ice and Fire, The Wandering Inn, all have famous characters, no? Stormlight got that mental illness characters, okay? You like your martial man with a streak of honor, your Aragorn, your Jon Snow, so on and so forth. Well, in Stormlight, we got Kaladin. He's like those others, honorable, good, he's a good boy, but with a crippling case of depression. And most all the other characters have similar veins of shadows. Kaladin is everyone's favorite, and it's for a reason. He is a good boy with a strong sense of morals, honor, vague notions of chivalry, gifted with the spear, and knowledgeable about surgery and medicine. But due to a truly extraordinarily unfortunate series of events, he found himself in the bottom of human society. A slave, he got turned into a slave and then shipped off to the Shattered Plains to get turned into a literal Skaven slave meat shield. You see, at the beginning of the series, there is a certain banquet for a certain king, the unifying monarch of Alethkar. And this king, apart from being probably one of the more dubious, sketchy, and downright unsettling characters within the whole series, also just so happened to be targeted by an assassin in white. Seth Sun Villano is him. This is a man possessing truly superhuman powers, both in the literal sense in that he can surge bind, and in the simple sense of human will and skill. This is a man who walks into the capital of the most warlike people on the earth and murders his way through countless guards, shard bearers, and anyone else to deliver destined death to his target, the king. He, of course, succeeds, and the world is never the same again. You see, Seth is truthless. He obeys the one who holds his oathstone, and the Parshendi had a hold of it, those peculiar guests of honor at the king's own feast. So Seth kills the king at the Parshendi's request, the Parshendi being a small people from the Shattered Plains near Alethkar, a collection of cracked plateaus and mesas. But why did these peculiar people from such a small corner of the world do such a thing, an action that would without question invite their extinction? The answer to this question is insane, convoluted, and one that would drive most who seek it to madness. Nevertheless, a war of vengeance begins. The unstable kingdom of Alethkar declares war on the small Parshendi culture. A war in an environment of hell, broken layered plateaus, frightening gargantuan great-shelled chasm fiends, the destabilization of the monarchy, which was still untested until now, ambition, sorrow, and death in so many flavors you become numb to it. Hordes of Alethi against Parshendi battle pairs. And in this vast, inescapable hell, you have Kaladin, lowest of the low, a bridgeman, forced to run into enemy arrows, carrying bridges to span the chasms between plateaus. The only release in such a situation is death. Kaladin is a creature of dignity. He applauds the dignity of others, respects them, and cares for them. But he himself? Kaladin is a character subsumed by the dark. Depression, melancholy, sadness, the call of the proverbial void. For Kaladin, that endless silence hurts him just as viscerally as a knife, and in many cases, more. And in this hell, where even hope goes to die, he slowly loses the will to go on. He even starts hallucinating a pretty spren that speaks to him and tries to be optimistic. Weird. This is one of the joys, I think, of the Way of Kings. The plot isn't some grand quest, but a day-by-day struggle for survival, both in the literal sense in that arrows, starvation, disease, betrayal, it's all bad, but also in the regards of your own darkness. How long before your own mind gives up, till the shadows grow too long? How long can you endure the silence? And that is a very large portion of the Way of Kings, Kaladin's struggle. Luckily for him, he has a lovely windsprint named Syl, who is just an extraordinary beam of sunlight for him in this infinite bleakness. And I think they have a really special dynamic that just works. It's a theme of Stormlight, that your shadows cling to you, but even still, there are ways to light the way. When your future is dark, follow even that one single star that lights your path. So while Kaladin fights for his life in the dark, there are a collection of other characters who also really leave me invested in the future of the world. Like possible war criminal, ex-alcoholic, and part-time amnesiac Dalinar Kholin, brother of the deceased king of Alethkar. Dalinar was not a great person, probably one of the not greatest persons ever, actually. But he's trying to be better, isn't he? Only gets haunting visions sometimes, only hallucinates sometimes, can't hear his wife's name or hold any memory of her due to a dubious deal with something called the Night Watcher. He's alright, at least as far as war criminals go. Dalinar, like Kaladin, is He values honor, growth, dignity. However, where Kaladin himself deals with the shadows of perceived frailty, incompetence, weakness, melancholy, and the depressive call of the void, Dalinar deals with the fact that the man he was is in complete opposition to the one he wants to become. His values have inverted almost completely. His critics call him a hypocrite and a liar. The most insanely bloodthirsty man in all of Alethkar now wishes to abide by the rules of war. And I like Dalinar and his sons quite a lot. Adolin and Renarin are good boys. Reading Adolin after half a book of Dalinar, Kaladin, and everyone else is just like, goddamn, finally some delicious, stable mental health. But while I love Kaladin and Dalinar dearly, my truly favorite POV characters are barely even around in the whole book. I'm of course speaking of Jasnah and Shallan and Shallan Devar. I absolutely love these two. I like them when they are together. I like them when they are separate. Shallan is our resident best girl, a beaming ray of enthusiastic sunlight. She draws fantastically well and is enraptured by all the wonders of the world. She's off to gain the tutelage of one of the most famous scholars in all the world. Jasnah and Shallan, one of the daughters of the deceased king of Alethkar. Jasnah is somewhat of a human hurricane, a brilliant scholar, one who ignores most social conventions and cultural principles in favor of absolute efficiency and truth. It is also curious to note that she is a rather staunch atheist. So these two go on scholarly adventures and slice-of lifestyle escapades in the kingdom of Kar Branth, ruled by the kindly old king Taravangian. Healthy debates, grand libraries, lovely bread and jam. What's not to love? Let's ignore that boorish fellow Kaladin and his infinite nightmare loop, or the delusional war criminal Dalinar. Things are grand, and I'd love to go on vacation to that delightful port city. And then you are hit with a massive brick directly into your forehead. Shallan, this beaming ray of happiness, kind of casually drops the fact that her real intentions are to steal Jasnah's Soulcaster, a device she stole from some of the more devoted members of society. And the thing is that this should have been the first warning that something was up. And yet I didn't see it. I just thought, oh, okay, that's interesting, and I kept reading. The problem is, for a character to hide something of that import from the reader means either two things. One, the author wrote it in a non-traditional way, or two, this character is unreliable and perhaps lied to even herself. Can you guess which one it was? Well, it's a good thing Shallan loves her home so much and wants to help her siblings figure out what happened with her father and, help that out, the whole situation, right? It's a bad situation. We gotta help it. Oh no. Okay, that's okay. That's all right. We will just go have a moral debate with Jasnah. What's the proper morals and oh my fucking god! Fuck! Oh my god! Okay. Everything is fine. We got bread and jam. We should have bread and jam. The old king. We can speak things. Things have been a little bit dark recently. We'll speak with Taravangian and. You get my point. I love the chapters with Shallan and Jasnah. I love them so much. I like the intrigue, the deception, the nature of the events that unfold. And then it's strange because after all of this unfolds, the book kind of just ends. There is very little in the way of conclusion or certainty. The future of the world feels vague, dark. We have fought off our shadows and things are better for now, but there is also this overpowering sensation that something unbearably ominous is almost here. Kaladin teams up with good old boy Dalinar, and Shallan and Jasnah begin to make their way to the Shattered Plains. And then the second book begins.
How do I live? How do I breathe? When you're not here, I'm suffocating. I wanna feel love run through my blood. Tell me, is this where I give it all up?
Words of Radiance is an interesting one. It's ranked the most highly out of the current 4 Stormlight books by popularity, and I can genuinely see the reason for that. Shallan backstory, our characters meet up properly, schizophrenic Alethi politics, Kaladin and Aladin becoming the bestest buds ever, the war on the Shattered Plains progressing to its final act, Seth targeting Dalinar himself, the duel, you know the one, I'm not going to explain it, but functionally I think the book displays the characterization and methodology of the Stormlight series as a whole. Namely in that the Words of Radiance, things aren't all that bad, at least when compared to some of the other books. Kaladin protected his people and has a job. It's not a bad job. Shallan gets determination and conviction in her mission. She's no longer just kind of, like, she's not just drawing anymore. She's got a grip. It's not the best grip, it's grip. Dalinar begins to live up to his ideals of himself. Adolin stops playing around quite so much, and, But even when things outside ourselves are good, what goes on within can be another thing entirely. Even though Kaladin succeeded, his thoughts grow ever darker. Consistently, he either leads himself astray, or the words of those close to him do. Moash. Kaladin gets cold. And it's horrible to see someone who succeeded just growing tired. His mask of power and honor slips a little bit. Dalinar has to come to terms with the fact that his nephew is kind of a loser, and that he failed as an uncle, but also as a steward for his brother's kingdom. The kingdom is coming apart at the seams from ambitions and endless rivalries and petty betrayals. Those he thought close to him turn on him. What is the point of all this honor, dignity, and respect? What is the point in changing if no one ever sees you as different and your actions accomplish nothing? And Shallan, dear Shallan, a character functionally built on enough lies to bury the entire dead of every desolation combined. Although she becomes determined and gains conviction, that adds pressure, internal stress. She lies to herself more, even as leaks begin to appear in her gentle and sweet facade. Reading her chapters is a struggle in telling what is real and what is fake, how much of her memories are overt, undeniable truth, and how much has been shifted around. And it's nice when she and Kaladin, after spending God knows how many pages fighting, finally come to understand a little bit about each other, small parts. I think the point of the conversation in the trenches of the Shattered Plains outlines one of the core points of the entire book. Everyone has shadows, but each are different. You and I may have nothing in common, not the same values, ideals. We may not speak the same words or love the same things, but in this moment, I see you. I can't tear the shadows off of you and you can't peel away mine, but at the least, I see you and you see me. Some people lie about the dark in silence, and some are too tired to do anything more than slowly lose the will to continue. But, nevertheless, I see you. There isn't always obvious things we can do. In fact, I'd say there is almost never anything we can do. But that can mean that even the smallest gesture, the only thing that without question can be done, matters. Just acknowledging someone matters. In all honesty, I think that's one of the reasons why Seth's mental state deteriorates so quickly. It's how someone so extraordinarily powerful can appear so truly sad and pitiful. Dalinar has his children who try to see him. Shallan and Kaladin have each other, and Adolin to a different extent. But Seth has no one. No one to see the shadows that cling to him. It's just him being devoured by the weight of his own horror. It's one of the reasons why Kaladin and Adolin's duel is so great. Not only are the odds insane with 4 Shardbearers pitted against them, but I think the themes also really work. Dalinar for the first time understands the nature of the situation he is in. I think it might be one of the first true instances where he really understands just how grim the future of Alethkar looks. That and every interaction with Sadeas. And in that moment, Kaladin steps up. For his own principles, but also to help others. It's a great scene, and it's so well known for a reason. The final showdown with the Parshendi is also fittingly insane. as those people have been driven to the edge of extinction. Desperation, ambition, and sheer foolishness drives them to take up a power that should never have been trifled with. Szeth and Kaladin have a war in the sky as the end of the world finally kicks off. Words of Radiance is a blast, and I think that for the overall consistent quality, it is probably the best Stormlight book. But I do actually have a few details which I find a little tricky. Namely, in regards to Jasnah. Now, I know that the author has responded to this very specific idea, and I think his response is great and makes a lot of sense. That said, I would still like to voice my thoughts, as well as the response that Sanderson had listed. Jasnah appears to die, then later at the end of the book, it is revealed that she jumped into Shadesmar to survive. This isn't the worst thing in the world, it's more so that the book also has Szeth coming back after an apparent death also. Now, Brandon Sanderson has stated that in some of the early drafts it was implied she was alive, but that didn't go over well with some of the beta readers and so on and so forth, so he overcorrected, which is fine, but I thought I would just mention it because I like Words of Radiance a lot. And Oathbringer is also something really, really intriguing. After the conclusion of Words, the end of the world has finally kicked off. The forces of Odium have returned in force. But it doesn't just completely and immediately devolve into fire and brimstone, which is, ironically, connected to one of the biggest tragedies of Stormlight. The Hordes of Evil, you know them, right? Orcs, Koloss, Uruk-hai, the Mooks, the villainous servants who die en masse for their masters. Stormlight has this also, kinda, it's just a hell of a lot more tragic. So, by the end of Words, it is relatively accepted that the Knights of Radiance have returned, bonding Spren, gaining surges, swearing oaths of goodness, and so on and so forth, and blah blah blah, you know. The Parshmen have also awoken, and it's gotta be Hordes of Evil versus the Knights of Honor, except the new Parshendi are seemingly just as confused as the humans. They have become intelligent once again, and many, of course, want vengeance, but just as many have no culture or ideas of their own. They use the words and traditions of whatever human kingdom they lived within. Just as so many want vengeance and wish to become soldiers for the Singer Armada, just as many are simple farmers, laborers, or otherwise nonviolent in nature. So then, it is truly tragic that this new Western storm has brought back the other forces of Odium and galvanized those who were already present. Fused and Voidspren specifically, timeless, endlessly reincarnating, insane, hateful, cunning, and powerful. Voidspren act as whispers, scouts, and spies, while Fused are the souls of ancient Parshendi singers who were granted immortality in ages past to fight in the eternal desolation wars against Radiant and Herald. Thousands upon thousands of years of war and hell have driven many mad through countless reincarnations. And so, in essence, the Voidspren and Fused, through sheer force of will, power, and coercion, automatically become the leaders of the confused Parshendi, and drive those victimized people further into hell by staring at yet another desolation war. The average soldier, the average Parshendi singer, is just that. They are not mad or insane like so many of the Fused, but people just like you and me. And that is completely ignoring the Unmade, but we will get into them. So Oathbringer has this really peculiar start where you expect the end of the world to kick off and Roshar to be plunged immediately into war, fire, hell, and all of that. Instead, it is the Fused slowly gaining their bearings and preparing the way, and the normal Parshendi struggling to come to terms with the new world. Oathbringer is a tricky one, as it is the preparation for the final conflict. Everyone is getting ready, trying to see who will make the first move. The person who gains momentum in this new war will, without question, seize the initiative. And it is tragic how I think the first act in this new era plays out. You see, while the vast majority of the Alethi government and military had been away dealing with the War of Vengeance and their own greed in the Shattered Plains, the Queen was left to rule Kholinar, the capital. And while she did, forces of a truly otherworldly nature infiltrated the city and set about their work. The Unmade, spren of a truly awful nature. If the heralds are to be considered saints or angels, then the Unmade are without question the princes of the apocalypse. They come in a variety of forms, from the unintelligent and instinctual monster, weapons of supreme destruction, saboteurs of lethal variety, to things even more sinister. The point is that by the time that the Singer army led by the Fused was sieging Kholinar, the city had spiritually already fallen, with its leadership being driven to madness and excess by the Unmade who stalked this once magnificent place. Perhaps in a better, more fortunate timeline, the heroes we so cared about would have been able to rise up. This was not that timeline. The city fell to the Singers. Each of the Knights Radiant failed, both on a literal sense in that they could not save the city, but also in a spiritual and mental sense. The siege of Kholinar represents a truly awful turning point. Shallan's mind fractures under pressure and self-deception. Kaladin's creed and belief shatters completely under failure and betrayal, and Dalinar himself is left in the dark. The death of Elhokar is, without question, one of the greatest tragedies of the series. The king was many things: foolish, arrogant, paranoid, pathetic, but he was also one who consistently tried to be better, and in the end, I think he might have actually become the king he always wanted to be. And on the verge of speaking the words and becoming Radiant himself, he is killed. I think there is an art to killing characters before their arcs are complete. When a character arc completes, and the story still has so much longer to go, the character's death can become expected in order to fuel the story or the other characters. But killing a character on the eve where their arc truly begins, that alters a story's trajectory fundamentally. And indeed, it did. Elhokar's death and the events surrounding it basically leave Kaladin and Shallan borderline functionless for much of the rest of the book. Or if they can function, it is at a cost to mental stability. Perhaps if things had gone a different way, Kaladin could have sworn the next ideal. Perhaps the Oath Gates could have been made to function properly, and so on and so forth. I strongly believe the only reason Kaladin and Shallan were able to function at all and keep going was because of the actions of a certain best boy. Adolin is the moral support they needed, a person who just burns with an infinite optimistic energy, bright, rational, and not crippled by his own shadows. But in the end, this failure brings the characters closer than ever to annihilation. The Battle of Thaylen Fields was close. Far, far too close for comfort. And I think probably the best conclusion to a Stormlight book thus far, at least in terms of the actual climax itself. The madness of Amaram, who uses the power of an Unmade, Dalinar's despair and struggling to come to terms with the fact that he burned his wife alive, plus an extra 100 or 1,000 people, Kaladin failing to become the hero of this book, Shallan coming to terms with her own self-deceptions and relying on them more and more, Jasnah nearly stabbing Renarin to death, Ner'Gaul turning a legion of Alethi soldiers into maddened Khornite berserkers. It really is fantastic. The forces of the Radiance only succeed by lieu of a miscalculation on the part of Odium. In the end, Cultivation played a far more clever game than Honor did, you see. So this god of passion Odium miscalculated the quirks of a human heart. Dalinar did not fall, he accepted his own shadows and became a better man for it. And so the day was won. Odium failed almost completely in that moment. His offensive, his initiative was halted, just ran straight into a brick wall. Which leaves us with the final chapter in this little saga of ours till Wind and Truth comes out.
And if they ever hear my name, will they know I walked alone around these dusty streets, my tired old home? And will they ever stop to think what was here before? No, they won't remember that I'm gone.
Rhythm of War is perhaps the strangest Stormlight book. Maybe this is because the world was made so much larger in Oathbringer, and the field of view and rhythm gets almost intimate in its closeness. Dalinar remains, I think, the only character to have truly accepted his shadows, and thusly functions at a pretty extraordinary level in this book. But for Shallan and Kaladin, there is nothing good. Kaladin freezes up, the void calls to him, his episodes get worse and worse until eventually he is relieved of duty. The other sides of Shallan have grown in independence until they are fully fledged others living in her head, and more fused wake up every day as the Singer forces grow more and more accustomed to this new world and their role within it. This book has a few major plot lines. 1. Kaladin does a diehard in Urithiru due to it being occupied by Singer forces. 2. Shallan struggling with herself and Adolin trying to find value in his actions in lasting integrity. 3. Navani doing an Oppenheimer. While all of that happens, Dalinar leads the war effort, Seth struggles with insanity and purpose, and a few other things of not at all import occur. This book is tricky. If Oathbringer was the villain's plans going all right and still failing, Rhythm of War might actually be the opposite. After Dalinar's victory at Thaylen Fields, the dread god Odium grew desperate. You can feel it throughout this book and the actions of his servants. They're more risky. Odium, and the one who holds its shard race, is tired, fearful, panicked to try and eke out a victory. He himself makes numerous mistakes, and it is only by virtue of those in his forces that he succeeds at all. And yet, even in Rhythm of War, in this most desperate hour, as the Honor Spren refuse to help in the war effort, as Kaladin falls deeper into a bottomless nightmare pit of melancholy, even as Navani is tricked and weapons never before seen on this planet are brought into creation, there is yet hope. Kaladin stands up one last time. Shallan faces her demons. Adolin's code of honor pays off. Dalinar's faith in a better tomorrow. The plot of Rhythm of War on paper is about victory in the most dire of situations. By the end of the book, things have literally never been in a more advantageous position for our heroes. Kaladin acknowledges the healing he needs. He sees his shadows and finally has gained the tools to fight them. Shallan has begun to put her fractured self back together. Adolin remains best boy. Dalinar continues in his duty. Things are good. But, you see, that is only on paper. The genius behind Rhythm of War is in the aspects more hidden, and also involves perhaps one of the most terrifying scenes that Brandon Sanderson has ever written. But for that, I think we are going to have to talk about some of the more morally dubious characters, shall we say?
Kill another whale with your power. Shoot a bunch of kids from a tower. Snipe them in their cars. Blood keeps them warm.
Wit and Jasnah, I think, are the only two who can see something moving just underneath the mundane world. Zeph is exposed to it, but cannot recognize it due to a literal mountain of personal issues, and everyone else is dealing with just trying to survive and their own personal demons. And it is strange, Wit and Jasnah. Not unexpected, but strange. Wit, Hoyd, whatever you want to call him, is fundamentally alien. Old, intelligent, a speaker of forbidden secrets, and I think it's telling but also tragic that the only time I have ever seen him or Jasnah even let down their guard for even an instant is around each other. Jasnah shields herself with proficiency, knowledge, and a calculating nature. She gives away nothing for free, while Wit hides himself in how obvious and loud he is. With how many secrets he practically gives away and says out loud, it makes you wonder just how many he hides. The nature of magic is in misdirection and lies, my friend, didn't you know? Moash is fascinating in his evolution from downtrodden bridgeman to a thing who endlessly calls out to the void. He has lost a part of his humanity. I say lost like it was taken, but I should say he gave it away. Under a pile of regret, hate, vengeance, Oathbringer was his storm of passion, and now he is absent, just silence. He has given up and said yes to his shadows, and in so doing has been eaten by them. And now, as a hollowed-out carcass, he wanders the world, eager to do the same. He knows the moments when you are at your weakest, when the world's silence is loudest. and he whispers as you stand over the chasm edge to jump. His evolution is something which has gone far, far too unnoticed by any who have interacted with him in the book itself. From man to empty thing, this has not been taken into account as much as it should have. Its end result was Kaladin nearly failing completely and the death of Teft. Then also there are the mysteries of the other Unmade and Ba-Ado Mishram. How have they evolved and changed? There's of course also the introduction of El, the original He Who Quiets. We can gain some understanding of his methodology and insights through his musings. A singer, a fuse no less, but not one with banal madness or the rigid weakness their kind so often has. One who wishes to adapt, to evolve. Humans should not be destroyed, but used and channeled. This creature earns respect and fear from even the Pursuer, and is perhaps one of the only mortal-esque creatures who yet knows the true identity of the new Odium. He will be one of the most important cards in these final 10 days. Rhythm of War is about fighting your own shadows and winning, yes, but it is also tragic in that much of the protagonists do not see the evolution of their enemy. They defeat Raboniel and the Pursuer, yes, but those two are not ones who were capable of true evolution. The Pursuer trapped in his idea of tradition, and Raboniel desperate, absolutely desperate to end the war. They were things from a bygone era who were barely able to change or adapt to this new one. Race 2 is a sad thing. It is pathetic in a way to see a godly force like that outsmarted, outthought, and outplayed by mortal men. What a sad thing he has become, how pathetic and weak. The Unmade have evolved since the last time and play their own games. Sia Anat schemes against her lord, Rey Shafir no longer seeks base destruction, and perhaps soon Ba-Ado Mishram might be freed. The Heralds too, all gone to madness, but changed, evolved. Sia Anat, while being one of the least on-page forces in all of the books, is 1/3 of the greatest tragedies in the series. Sia Anat has the ability to enlighten Spren, and while I do not truly understand the full ramifications of this act, the Spren she was able to grant to Renarin gave him limited glimpses of the future. And like in Dune, those who have prescience cannot see others with the same ability. Thusly, those about Renarin become blind to the eyes of Odium. And with the placement of a few enlightened Spren, she lures her god to the wrong location at the wrong time. Szeth also is 1/3 of this tragedy. He cannot see the forces that jerk and pluck him around. He is far too dedicated to his ideal. A classic Skybreaker fault, I'm sure you'll agree. Far too rigid are those creatures. Though this is also due to his quite unsettling mental state, which he's struggling. And all of this leads us to the final part of this grand tragedy and the most fear-inducing scene that Sanderson has ever written. So, finally, let us talk about, by far, one of my most favorite characters in the series. Let us talk about the Bicamero King himself. Let us talk about Orange Taravangian.
I just my fantasy boy. I made you up, you were my toy, and I found you as a dream inside my head.
So, Taravangian was another, like Dalinar, who went to the old magic for a boon. However, it was not the Night Watcher who gave him his power, but cultivation. Another shard, like Odium. He asked for one thing, the ability to save mankind, and his wish was granted, in a way. His mind was split and made bicameral. He either has intelligence and logic, or emotion and feeling. The greater one becomes, the lesser the other. One day, however, his intelligence reached that of some nigh omnipotent god. So intelligent, so cunning, that he was able to create a diagram for the future. A guiding light to lay out mankind's salvation. For Taravangian, the ends always justify the means. For the Knights Radiant, it is the journey before destination. For the Orange King, it is precisely the opposite. He guides the assassin in white. He collapses much of the world's governments and states by murdering their rulers. He was perhaps the only one, other than Jasnah, who knew what was coming. But by Oathbringer, it seems as though his power has run its course. The problem with logic is in predicting the human heart. His plans were laid open, bare, and he has been coerced by the increasingly desperate Odium. He did win, in part. He saved his city from the god of passion. The price was his own sacrifice. He leaves his friends, his comrades, everyone behind to give himself up to Dalinar so that Odium might take Urithiru. His days of intelligence grow less and less and less often. He grows weaker, stupider, and more emotional by the day. And it's kind of pathetic. This great scheming king left alone in a room, the architect of so much tragedy, now alone as his mind leaves him with less and less. He barely has the faculties to understand his own actions, nor the control over his emotions. He's just crying alone in the dark. People speak to him at times, Dalinar, Renarin, Seth, Sia-Anat, and I prepared to watch one of my favorite antagonistic characters vanish from the story. Except, there was one detail which unsettled me somewhat. If Taravangian is truly out of the play, which he has almost nothing to do with the events at Urithiru or lasting integrity, then why is it there are so many Taravangian interludes? Why is it the focus kept coming back to him? I could see things shifting beyond the view of most of the characters. Kaladin couldn't see it, Shallan couldn't see it, Navani couldn't see it, Dalinar couldn't see it. Not even Jasnah or Wit. You see, there was a secret to Taravangian's emotional state. When in a state of logic, he could see possibilities, probabilities, numbers, the future, but remained blind to the heart. While in his emotional state, it became the opposite. Because the logical self was suppressed, he could understand the hearts of those around him. And a god of passion is nothing if not emotion. On Taravangian's smartest day, he created a guide so that he could get to the day where he was at his most passionate. Odium, that lord of passion, that shard of power, failed once again at Urithiru and became more and more desperate. And this being went to visit Taravangian just as he and Sia-Anat had planned. Szeth, goaded by Taravangian's words, came to unload all of his sorrow upon the man who was the architect of this awful world. In the end, it was not some god or invincible assassin or radiant or even herald. In the end, the final blow to this supreme being came from some tottering old king who had the most idiotic day of his entire life. Szeth guessed at nothing, Odium guessed at nothing, Cultivation and Sia-Anat and Taravangian himself had calculated, gambled, and won. Szeth's blade was plunged into the heart of a god by a crying idiot king. The god died, and Taravangian drank from the well and ascended. This is it. This is the worst case scenario for not only Roshar, but the Cosmere as a whole. Well, maybe not worst case. Taravangian will save them all. He will save absolutely every single one of them, after all. And now, we get to it. The final scene in Rhythm of War, and the most terrifying one Brandon Sanderson has ever written. At the end of all Stormlight books, we get Wit or Hoyd or whatever he is to say a few words. He plans and makes his intentions, which are usually vague, somewhat more clear. In this book, he intends to have a chat with his dear old mate Race as Odium. And it goes according to plan. Race is an ignorant fool, an arrogant idiot who thinks nothing but vengeance, and then Odium asks a question. Something out of character for Race. Wit, supreme being that he is, notices this slight miscalculation and tries to take his leave. But the old Orange King, now god of passions, notices and strips Wit of some of his memories. And for the first time in who knew how long, Wit felt genuine fear. The scene replays. Wit feels something is off but cannot place it. Taravangian gives away nothing. I have seen some rather lively debate about this scene in regards to Wit's monologue about misdirection and tricks. Some think he tricked ODM with false memories, and others that because the second time Wit tries his magic trick that it fails, that he really was outplayed. In reality, we cannot say for certain. The truth of the matter will be made clear, though, soon enough, my friends. Nevertheless, if Wit truly was tricked, then this perhaps marks a first. To be honest, I have a dark, sinking feeling towards the coming end of Winds and Truth. I feel that something terrible is about to happen, though I cannot yet define as to what it may be. The game has changed. The final days to apocalypse or victory are here. 10 days, 10 days, 10 days, my friend, until one half of our journey on Roshar is complete. Who will live, who will die, and who will lay smote upon the mountainside? Funnily enough, I think we must be able to gauge some of the Stormlight's future from way back in the Way of Kings, back when Jasnah and Taravangian would speak on the nature of gods and men. I think the secrets of the Stormlight's future lie there, though I have no proof other than my own instincts and intuition. But I guess we come to it, the final point of this video. There are long histories of different stories and trends out there that mirror the changing values of people and cultures. Eras of classics and romantic modernistic style and archetypes and myths, and periods more psychological and deconstructive. Stormlight marks a trend wherein it both has the old romantic tendencies but also a deconstruction style aspect to it. First, there are the ideals and perceived golden hue, optimism, and archetypes. Then these archetypes are made more psychological, human, flawed. The world is a nasty and mean and dark place after all. But Stormlight doesn't leave you there in the dark. It carries you through. It is a metamodern story, perhaps one of the first truly well-known ones, though there are certainly others. Hell, even its name draws you to that idea, Stormlight. When you are lost in black winds, howling gales, and miserable storms, look for the light. The dog and the dragon and the other varied tales of Wit are evidence of that, I think. Even in the bleakest, most miserable storms, there are still flashes of skyfire lightning. And look at that. The high storm is letting up, my friend. We have finished our wines and tasty Kremling sweetmeats, and now we must go back into the real world. Take care and smell that fresh air, my friend. Take breath and say the words. I'll see you when I see you. Thanks for watching. Hit the button. You know the button. Likey, subby button. And also let me know, once again, down below, which order of Radiant you would be in and what are your favorite types of Spren. You can take the official quiz. It's online. Brandon Sanderson himself made it. It's going to be true. I myself love Cryptics and Inkspren and got Lightweaver. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.